I've been playing games for most of my life, and I have to say that these last few years of gaming are kind of a disappointment. You've got all of these so-called alpha games. You've got all these AAA title games that come out just horribly broken. It's kind of like games have de-evolved in a sense. In the gaming industry, they are trying their best to save money, and by saving money, they just like to copy and paste or, sell the game before it's even done. And they like to push things ahead, make sure it comes out in winter time. It's kind of ridiculous, honestly. Like, all the games that tend to come out in wintertime tend to be broken now, incomplete, and they always promise, oh, we'll get it done, we'll update it. And it kind of became a big issue when you had systems that could now, update. Back when, before there was updates, you get a game and that was it. It was just, that was the game. There's nothing else you could do about it. And now you've got, these companies that can just half-ass their games. And so you get a huge decline in these games and just how poorly they're made. So I grew up with, the NES and DOS. So I grew up with like some of the classic games that came out, like Zelda, Mario. Just looking back at everything that's led up to the games now, it's kind of weird because I always saw 3D games becoming better and better. But something happened along the way with the Xbox, the GameCube, and the PlayStation 2, kind of around that era. That kind of changed everything. I think it all kind of starts with, Halo. I mean, I probably shouldn't be saying that because I know a lot of people love that game. And in fact, I loved that game back when it first came out. But I think I just liked it because I was hyped up on it because everyone said how good it was. And I understand how good of a game it was for the time being because it invented, the first FPS on consoles, really. The one that you could actually legitimately play that was closer to any PC, since the PC was the master of all FPSs up to that time. It kind of stems all back to Halo, in a sense. Because when Halo came out, it was, tons of awards. Everyone was praising it for being, the best shooter on a console. And it definitely had the best controls, for sure, and it had some fun gameplay, but I would say as a total of the game, it was nothing I really was impressed by. I'd played, Turok and Turok 2, those games in general, just those two games, those games were fantastic. Like, the creativeness that they put into it, the realism of the enemies that you fought. You didn't have the same thing in Halo. In Halo you had, like 3 enemies in the game. It was like the same areas over and over again. There was 2 weapons that you used, and they were all generic weapons that weren't anything exciting. And it had a decent story, I guess, if you're into that. It wasn't the greatest story, I thought. But the FPSs on console had something to it. Like on the N64, they had a creativeness to it that, the games in the future didn't, like Halo and stuff. The creative levels that they'd have, the design and stuff, they didn't need like a huge story. It was focused on gameplay more than anything else. It wasn't about story or anything like that. It was about you having your freedom to do what you want to do and with what weapon you wanted, because you get it all. So you get to try everything and just enjoy it. You play GoldenEye and you get every weapon in the game and you try it out on all these different enemies in different styles. These games had like their style and stuff. They had all kinds of things that you didn't get in these new generation games. They kind of all became just this straightforward, walk forward and kill everything in sight and then go to the next one. But these games on older consoles, they had their own style to it. It was like, okay, instead of just running forward and killing everything, all right, we have objectives for you to solve. Okay, so figure out how to do this and that and this. It wasn't just a straightforward shooter where you just become mindless and you just shoot everything on sight. It actually immersed you into the game, whereas these mindless games that kind of you just shoot everything that moves don't really have that same, I don't know, doesn't have that same feeling because you're not really using your mind to figure out where these things are. It's kind of all just given to you. It's hand tossed to you, and you just accept it. Since the PC was, the master of all FPSs at the time, with Doom, Duke Nukem, Quake, during that time, it was just PC had the first person shooters, and all the console games up to then just had these other things, which still made consoles relevant at the time, but I feel like they kind of became irrelevant after, Xbox 360 and stuff came out. After Xbox 360 came out and PlayStation 3 came out, I would say that games kind of started leaning towards the PC, because now you're starting to get all these console games on your PC and with better performance and just overall better in everything. But before that, there was a reason to have a console. But there was a reason to have these consoles back in the day, before PC kind of took over. You would have your Mario, you'd have your classic RPGs like Final Fantasy and stuff, because you couldn't get those on PC. Those were only console games. Most of the console games that you would get were on console, whereas now you can get pretty much any game on PC. You can emulate any game you want on PC. When the Xbox 360 came out, I think it was less about the gameplay and it started becoming more about the graphic design. And companies started to go for like, okay, what makes the most money for us? And so when they came out, with Call of Duty Modern Warfare, and that kind of became the staple for games. You'd have two guns, and online would be the main focus of the game. It wasn't about making a single player game anymore. It was about, okay, how do we make the most money for a game that we can just easily make? So these games started making all these kind of, I wouldn't say rip-offs, but kind of the same format. The two weapons. Everybody's got to have two weapons. You shouldn't have more than two weapons at a time, and games kind of devolved in trying to be more like real life than it was to be in this own fantasy world. I'm not saying every game was following a format. There was plenty of games still coming out that were, unique and great games for sure in the Xbox and PS3 era. But then, this new era of games came out, and with the new consoles coming out, I feel like they kind of just failed, because at least the Xbox 360 and the PlayStation 3 I liked how they're set up. PlayStation 4 is alright, but the Xbox kind of blew it on the new Xbox One. It was supposed to be, this console for everyone, and the console doesn't even work. I feel like it's broken most of the time. It's like things take forever to load. It doesn't make any sense. When you have better hardware, it works less. But I'm not a technical person or anything like that. These are things I've noticed that are just kind of like, why would that ever happen? But yeah, during the time of the Xbox 360, games took a turn and Steam came out. And that's when gaming kind of changed forever, because now you had this program that would, have all these games available for you, and they would have all these crazy good deals where you couldn't get them in store. And you could also find games that wouldn't even sell other than digitally in your own home. So it was crazy, because you think this would make everything better. All the games would get better and all that, because now you could get anything at any time, and game developers could make these games and sell them on Steam easier and better. But that's not what happened. What happened is that games kind of started going into this thing where it was like, okay, you know what? We can make money without even having to complete a game, and people will still buy it. And so people did. People bought it because they believed and these companies would fulfill their promises. So you'd have these alpha games coming out, and they wouldn't ever get completed. So people were shelling money out for these games that just wouldn't ever be completed. I mean, some games are still being updated for sure. There are still great companies out there with alpha games. I don't trust any alpha game anymore, so I don't play any alpha games at all. One, I can't play them because they're broken and they're just usually terrible. But I do see the potential in them. But the problem is they put out the same thing over and over again, because they know people are going to try to buy it. It didn't cost them much money to do, and if you just put it out, at least you'll make something, right? So that's what it kind of went to. But yeah, people were just, instead, it's become like this thing where it's like, okay, here's a free-to-play game, or here's an alpha game that you can pay $20 for. And that's kind of ridiculous, because MMOs, for one, I know people love MMOs. I'm not one of those people. I can't stand MMOs for the sole reason. Not that because it's bad gameplay or anything like that, but the problem is MMOs always make you work for everything. It feels like that I'm literally working a second job. And I already have a job, so having a second job, just why would I ever want to have a second job where I have to farm most of the time? It's crazy. People enjoy farming. I get it. The reason why there's so many MMOs out there. MMOs are great for some people, you know. I grew up my life having a couple friends, right? We'd play games. I'd go over to their house and I'd play their PlayStation because I didn't own a PlayStation at the time, but a lot of my friends did, so I'd go over there and play with them. We'd play, you know, split screen games and stuff like that. But there wasn't anything that was like a massive multiplayer online thing. So it was just us. It was just us two. We'd play on the same screen. We'd play a co-op game together. But they have all these like massively multiplayer online games that I can't get into because I don't feel like I'm attached to these people like I was back in the day. When I used to play games with a friend, it was somebody who I literally knew. I don't get that same feeling when I'm playing with somebody online. They aren't like a real friend, which is why I play the games. I only like to play games with friends, not people I meet online. So I never really got into MMOs because of that, because I didn't like the idea of, you know, making a friend online and just playing with them. And it wasn't just one friend. You had to have like 8 friends, depending on what you're doing or what game you're playing. So it's just kind of, I don't know. MMOs were never my thing for many reasons. I get they're huge and they make a lot of money because it's, you know, pay to play. You can pay more money to get better things so you don't have to farm. I get it. That's why game companies are doing that, because they're making millions of dollars off of a game, because people are literally spending thousands of dollars to get the best items. But yeah, that's kind of where games have kind of devolved into. They've kind of devolved into the how can we make more money routine. Most of these game companies are realizing that now, so now they're saying, okay, how do we make the most money with a game we only charge $60 for? Well, we'll add in in-game currency you can buy or something. That's fine. You don't have to buy that. I can beat games without that. That's fine. But I don't think it's going to last very much longer, because eventually they're going to want more money. During E3, they promised a lot of things, but they never actually give you the game that they show, which is crazy to me. They blatantly lie to people. Like, they literally show you something and lie to you and tell you that you can do a certain thing, and then when you get the game, you get disappointed because you literally can't do that. You can't do that at all. So there's been a bunch of examples over the years. Probably the best example right now would be No Man's Sky, which I knew was going to be garbage from the first time I set my eyes on it, because I knew it was just another game where you just mine and stuff, and it's like a Minecraft without the Minecraft. There's no real point. Explore planets. Why? Why do I explore planets? To collect rocks. Okay. I don't care. So I never bought into that game. I'm glad I didn't, because all these people are disappointed, and the letdown of what this company led them to believe. And I understand that, because growing up with these games, when we got a game back in the day, it was what we got. When we played it, it was the game that was shown. It wasn't something that wasn't, you know, lied to us about. It wasn't like, oh, well, maybe you can do that. Maybe it's online. We know if it's online or if it's not online. If it's 2-player, if it's 4-player, if it's 1-player. We knew when it was going to be. You would have to go into the store and basically look at the back cover and decide whether or not that game was a game you wanted. You have all this technology now that shows you the game, and even then you still don't know what you're getting, because you don't know if that's the real game or not. It's crazy. Like, if we had the stuff that we had back then, it would be like, okay, we know exactly what not to buy. Never buy LJN, because obviously the games are shit, but the game covers look great, so that's why we'd buy it. N64 came out. You know, you had Mario, you had Turok, you had like all these great classic games that came out for the system, and it was such a revolutionary system with the 3D and stuff. I feel like that's why the GameCube was so shit upon. Basically, when the GameCube came out, it had a bunch of great games. I will say that right now. It has a lot of great games in it. But the problem is it didn't live up to the same hype that the N64 had. And since the N64 had such, you know, was such on a high level, this one being on the lower level basically means it's shit. So now you have this system that's way up here with the N64. You're expecting something greater, than that. And that's not what they gave you. They gave you Star Fox Adventures and stuff, which is a pretty shitty game, but it's not the worst game ever. Not compared to today's standards. Like I could play that game over anything. Like today, it's crazy. But yeah, the shit that they just released now compared to these old games, it kind of makes you wish that you still had all these old games to play. Like they were still making them. So all I really have is indie developers that are kind of just they're coming out with cool games, but they're not the quality games we should have now. They should be on a level. We have these 3D games and stuff, but nobody focuses on the gameplay when it's a 3D game. They focus on how it looks first, and then the second is the gameplay. That's the very last. It's got to be, this thing of art or whatever, which I kind of get, but at the same time, I play a lot of broken, not broken, I should say a lot of glitchy games that are a lot of fun just because of how much shit you can do in the game. Just the versatility and the style that games have. I think the style kind of comes in first before anything else. You have Devil May Cry 3, great example of a game that's kind of old now and looks terrible if on a newer console, but you'd rather play that over the new DMC because they decided to change all kinds of great things that made Devil May Cry great. The purpose now is just to make as much money as possible. It's not about making the greatest game experience of your life. When you had PS2 and stuff like that, I feel like that was the pinnacle of 3D gaming, because when you were playing those games back then, there's a lot of shit games, I will say that. But at the same time, there's a lot of innovative games that kind of went somewhere, but they kind of ended there. They had all these cool things, these cool ideas that they were coming out with, what if we do this with the game or something. Resident Evil 4 came out for the GameCube, which changed Resident Evil forever. One of my favorite games. It's not my favorite Resident Evil, but it is one of my favorite Resident Evils. My second favorite, I should say, next to Resident Evil 2. But that game there's all kinds of games like that just kind of changed things. You had Kingdom Hearts, which kind of changed RPGs and how they played, and that was a Disney game. So then they came out with achievements, which I was never a real fan of. The reason being that it kind of changed games not for the better. When you played a game now, it's you have to play legitimately, otherwise, it's not fair for the people who earn these achievements for real. So these games took out their cheat codes, or deactivated your saves, so you couldn't save if you cheated, which was, I think, a stupid thing, because I used to play games like crazy because of cheat codes. I had a Game Genie or Action Replay, Game Shark, all that, just to enjoy the game to another level. Get all the guns in the first level instead of having to wait till the very last level to have all the guns. And now you can't enjoy this one weapon because you get on the very last level. So they kind of changed all that. They got rid of cheat codes, and now you had to earn your points by playing the game legitimately, which I can see is a thing. Whatever, people like it, I guess. I don't see the appeal, because it really kind of just shows you how much you play games, and it's not a good thing. Oh, look how much of a complete nerd you are. That's crazy. It could be a marketing thing. Oh, look how many more points your friend has. Oh, you better catch up to him. You don't have as many games as him. I was excited for Metal Gear Solid 5, and it was a fun game, but it wasn't the same. It wasn't Metal Gear Solid 3. Metal Gear Solid 3 was probably the last best one that we had. 4 was alright. It was mostly a movie. Just to tie up the loose ends. It wasn't anything great. It was just another linear shooter, whatever. And 5 decided to follow the same way, hold 2 guns, that's it. Follow that standard of realism, I guess. It's not really realistic at all, so I don't know why I had to take a realistic approach. I felt like it was kind of one of the weaker ones. So this game that I had looked forward to, the one last game that I really kind of looked forward to, kind of was a letdown just because it was so unnecessary. The open world was unnecessary. The story was unnecessary. It didn't have the same heart it used to have. It had heart, it definitely had some kind of heart, but it wasn't the same as it used to be. It kind of just fell apart, I felt like. By the end of the game, I was just left disappointed. But yeah, that's my rant. I could keep ranting on all day about these games, but I just wanted to make a video, an actual video, instead of just streaming. So I thought I'd make a rant video about how much I dislike games nowadays. Even though I love games, I can't stop playing games. I play games all the time. But I thought I'd just, just tell you all how I feel about them before I start making more videos. This is kind of the re-launch into my games. I'm going to get started on my Metal Gear Solid videos again, and hopefully, I do a little bit better job with all the editing and stuff. It was kind of a learning curve, so still have to mess with that and figure it all out. This is all just me learning, trying my best, so I thought I'd release this video before I start releasing more of those videos, so just as an update type thing. Don't know if you guys even care about my interests in games or not, but I thought I would share it with you all. There's still game companies coming out with great projects and stuff. I think the new Doom came out, fantastic. They focused on making that same fast-paced Doom you had on the first game. They wanted to go back to its roots, which I think is great. I think it's great that they're going back to those roots. Bethesda is trying to keep that classic game feel, but kind of making it new at the same time. Can't say that about all their games because, Fallout 4 wasn't the best example, but it's pretty much the same thing as Fallout 3, but Fallout 3 was way better. Even the older Fallouts are classic games. You can't compare to them. But the new Quake coming out, reminiscent of, Quake 3 Arena, I love it. I missed Quake 3 a lot. Overwatch was great. I love that, but, I was always a Team Fortress guy. Loved Team Fortress 2. Overwatch it was fun. It's a lot of fun for sure, but not a game that I would say is. What should I say is, I don't play Overwatch as much because I guess I'm not a competitive player. Like, I play for fun and not really for the competitiveness, so I don't really get into these games as much. I kind of just enjoy the game. I hope it's something great that I'll enjoy.